Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a seriously fascinating psychological tale today. We're going to look at how a grown adult stops being, well, basically a child in disguise and finally steps into true embodied confidence. You can kind of think of it as our very own journey of great expectations. But instead of waiting around for some mysterious benefactor to just hand us our future, we're actually learning how to claim it for ourselves. So, let's anchor our whole story right here with this one crucial question. Why do so many adults walk around like a modern-day Peter Pan? Or, honestly, like a tragic Dickensian character totally trapped by their circumstances and struggling with even basic emotional regulation? I mean, on the outside, they look exactly like grown-ups. But internally, they're basically just waiting for someone else to step in, fix all their problems, and manage their emotional lives for them. Okay, moving right into Section 1, the child in adult clothes, or emotional infantilism. Now, this condition is exactly what psychologists call emotional infantilism. You'll also hear it referred to as the puer aeternus, which is Latin for the eternal child. We all know someone like this, right? It's the person who reacts to stress with literal toddler-like tantrums. We're talking dramatic emotional outbursts or just a total inability to take any criticism without getting massively defensive. They fully expect everyone else to manage their life, and they're constantly deflecting blame with phrases like, "Well, you made me do this," or "It's just not fair," instead of ever actually taking real accountability. But we have to ask, why does this actually happen? Well, Dr. Gabor Mate really hits the nail on the head here. He says, when trauma gets triggered, you don't act your age. You act the age the wound was created. So that childish behavior, it isn't always just some inherent character flaw. A lot of the time, it's literally an overwhelmed nervous system running a super ancient survival program. Think about Charles Dickens' famous character, Miss Havisham. Sitting there for decades in her decaying wedding dress, just completely frozen in time by this one past wound. When our emotional growth gets halted by early trauma or neglect, as adults, we quite literally revert to the age we were when that wound happened. Let's dig a little deeper into this in Section 2, the ghosts of our past, focusing on trauma and enmeshment. So, one massive hidden factor here is enmeshment. This is essentially a family dynamic of just suffocating closeness. Instead of letting a child go through a healthy separation, that child is unconsciously expected to fulfill their parents' emotional needs. It's a dynamic that completely sacrifices a child's autonomy for the sake of family loyalty. And the result? Well, they grow into adults who absolutely cannot set boundaries. They are terrified to say no, and they can't make an independent decision without feeling absolutely crushed by guilt. They've essentially been trained since birth to be an emotional caretaker rather than an independent adult. Another major ghost haunting us from the past is learned helplessness. This is very much like another Dickensian character, Mr. Macabre, who famously just passively sits around waiting for something to turn up instead of actually taking charge of his own life. Adults with learned helplessness give up incredibly easily, and here's the science behind why. Their brain has actually been conditioned by repeated, uncontrollable stress to believe that any effort they make is absolutely useless. The brain's perceived control circuits literally weaken over time. It teaches them that passivity is literally their only option. All right, so how do we try to hide all of this? Let's look at Section 3, the illusion of adulthood, or performative maturity. This brings us to a super important distinction, the difference between performative maturity and embodied maturity. Performative maturity is basically white-knuckling your way through life. You're constantly suppressing your emotions, gritting your teeth, and probably judging anyone else who shows a hint of vulnerability. You might look totally calm on the outside, but underneath, your nervous system is redlining in a constant state of hyperarousal. Embodied maturity, on the other hand, feels totally different. It feels spacious, it's flexible. You actually feel safe enough in your own body to process real feelings. You don't have to force it, it's just simply how you operate. So, looking at this table, where do you think you stand? This 5-domain maturity map is a fantastic tool to help figure that out. Because what it shows is that maturity isn't just an all-or-nothing trait. For example, you might be highly mature at work, taking responsibility for your mistakes like an absolute pro. But then the second you're around your family of origin, boom, you instantly revert to a defensive teenager who can't hold a single boundary without feeling intense guilt. And listen, that variation is totally normal. But mapping it out like this highlights exactly where your specific growth edges are. So, how do we actually fix this? That's Section 4, breaking the helplessness chain. The absolute truth is, you have to start with the body. Emotional maturity is roughly 40% physiology. So you have to first expand what psychologists call your window of tolerance. Because if you're stuck in fight or flight mode, your rational thinking brain is completely offline, period. So you start by practicing things like the physiological sigh or a simple 5-4-3-2-1 grounding method to actively calm that nervous system down. From there, you can start challenging those pessimistic thoughts and setting really small, achievable SMART goals to help rebuild your brain's sense of actual control. By making low-stakes, independent choices, you're literally signaling safety to your body. And that baseline of physical safety is an absolute requirement before you can effectively start setting new boundaries. Now for the turning point. Section 5. Building true psychological maturity. According to psychologist Robert Kegan's Stages of Adult Development, true psychological maturity requires a pretty massive internal shift. You have to move out of what he calls Stage 3. Stage 3 is essentially just playing a role in someone else's script, living entirely by external expectations just to fit in and belong. You have to transition through that conflict and reach Stage 4, which is self-authorship. This is the sweet spot. This is where you finally become the confident author of your own life. You start making decisions guided by an internal compass of values that you have actually sat down, examined, and consciously chosen for yourself. And you'll know you're getting there when these specific, observable behaviors become your new default setting. This is what genuine emotional maturity looks like in the wild. It means you handle criticism without immediately throwing up your defenses. You can offer a genuine apology without tacking on the word but at the end. You develop cognitive flexibility, which is the ability to hold two completely contradictory truths at the same time. And maybe most importantly, you can actually sit with emotional discomfort instead of instantly grabbing your phone or a drink to just numb it all out. Which leads us to our final chapter, Section 6, Stepping into Confident Adulthood. So how do we put this all into practice and really test ourselves? We prove it through the incredible empowerment of doing things alone. Doing things solo, whether that's attending an event, sitting at a cafe, or even taking a trip by yourself, isn't about isolating yourself or rejecting human connection. Not at all. It's actually a profound psychological practice. Doing things alone builds what we call internal resourcefulness. It proves to your brain, indisputably, that you can navigate life's challenges without constantly needing external validation, reassurance, or someone else to take care of you. It is, without a doubt, the ultimate antidote to enmeshment. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this one provocative question to really chew on. Are you performing maturity right now, or are you actually living it? I want to challenge you to drop that exhausting performative act, embrace the totally normal discomfort of real growth, and step fully into the great expectations of your own capable, self-authored adulthood. Thanks so much for joining me today, and hey, keep building those internal resources.